Well guys, it's been a while since we've reached back for Godfall because, well, we were quite frankly waiting for the ray tracing update for the NVIDIA cards to become available, and with their Primal update, we have that update hitting the game. So the game now supports ray tracing on AMD and NVIDIA cards, so long as they support DXR ray tracing. Now, there is some caveats here. One, I'm not a huge fan of the way they implemented ray tracing in this game because it acts more like a screen space filter. So kind of like what you would see with some of the third-party applications that add in ray tracing support. If you want to see more on that, I'll link the video up in the corner for that so you can go back and see how I diagnosed that and took a look at how that impacted the actual visuals of the game. But what we did here was we took the recent cards, so the RTX 30 series and the 6000 series RX cards from Radeon, and we threw in the 2080 Ti because everybody wants to see what Turing would do if it was up against the cards. Now, I do want to make, well, you know what, before we get to that, it was done on our typical test bench. Smart access memory was enabled. These are the things that we've been doing. When NVIDIA does enable that smart access memory style rebar or resizable BAR, resizable bar, however you want to, notate it, it'll be in there with the settings. So that's what it'll be like going forward. So when they get that updated, we'll be glad to add that for those guys. Now, the one thing that I did come across that was really weird with this game was I noticed some rendering anomalies that did not show up before. Now, in the past, I didn't notice this until I was doing side-by-side comparisons. And even while I was playing the game to see how things kind of came up, and the game does support Fidelity FX contrast adaptive sharpening, so it's Fidelity FX cast, but there is no option in the game. And thanks to a tweet from Blue is Violet over on Twitter, who responded to a thread that I had discussing this, he seems to think that there is like Fidelity FX cast is being overdone, but it looks like it's only being applied to the Radeon cards. And in the side-by-side, you can kind of see that where the character is standing next to, well, he's not standing next to himself, but it's two rendered images, one with the 3090 and one with the 6900 XT, both at 4K with the exact same settings. And it looks like there's some over sharpening going on with the AMD card. Now, it almost appears to be running at a lower resolution, but it could just be that rather than applying the normal anti-aliasing filter, it's just applying Fidelity FX cast, and it's just a little bit harsh on it. So I noticed that while playing because it looked, well, it was something about it looked off, and after looking at it side by side, that seems to be what it was. Even in the other scenes where, like the benchmark scene that we used for the results, there were what appeared to be on one card, like the volumetric lighting and alpha effects such like that were more intense on one card. They were more intense on the RTX cards than they were on the Radeon 6000 series cards. So some people prefer one over the other, but it does create a little bit of well, they're not quite parity on the image, which makes the numbers a bit difficult to really put A and B up against each other, because if you're not getting the same quality, whether you like the quality better on one or the other, they're still not quite doing the same. So I think what the bigger impact to look at whenever we look at the results here momentarily is the move from, say, ray tracing on to ray tracing off, or ray tracing off to on. That'll be what we do. You can compare it. The performance is what it is. This is the performance that the cards give with the test bench that we tested it on at the resolutions with the Epic preset across the board. So let's jump at 1080p and take a look at what those look like. So right off the bat here, you see a hefty lead for the Radeon cards. The Radeon cards are running really, really strong at this resolution in this game with ray tracing disabled. When you enable ray tracing, they still do fairly well. Now, it is more in line with each other. So like the 6800 XT is coming out a bit ahead of the 3080 here, and the 6900 XT is just ahead of the 3090. Now this is at 1080p, and we know the RTX cards do tend to do a bit weaker down here at these lower resolutions, while the Radeon cards do better, but it is what it is, and that's just how things shake out. Bumping things up to that middle resolution, so 1440p, which is much more common for these higher end cards, and we see a very similar story. The lead is it's closed in a lot. The performance barrier is closed quite a bit. You see the 3070 and the 2080 Ti performing neck and neck there. Now, when you take these numbers and you enable ray tracing, you see a bit more expected performance. But look at this, big impact there on the 3080 cards. The 30 series cards got a pretty big hit. The 3090 still maintained pretty good numbers, even pulling ahead now of everything else. And it goes to show you this game loves VRAM. The more VRAM, the better. That's just no joke. Like if you run this game, it will saturate the VRAM and it'll do swapping, you know, texture swaps and stuff, and it will slow you down if you have a lower VRAM pool. I would be interested to see once a certain graphics card comes out before too long that has more VRAM than the 3080, how it handles compared to the 3060 Ti and the 3070 here. Because you can see here the 2080 Ti with ray tracing on is showing itself to be quite a bit more capable than the 3070. So that VRAM buffer is definitely coming into play here, although the 3080 isn't much ahead of that 2080 Ti. Now, let's move things into the big boy resolution. Full-blown UHD 4K resolution. With ray tracing off, we see here a little bit more common of a numbers system here. So, I mean, these are more common what we see in other games. So it's kind of, you know, the numbers have shifted a bit, I guess is really the only way to say it. You know, at the lower resolutions, the Radeon cards were ahead. And as you get into the higher resolutions here, you see the 3080 and 3090 pull ahead. Notice here the 2080 Ti is a bit slower than the 3070 at this higher resolution. And the 3070 and 3060 Ti are quite a bit behind all the other cards there as far as the 6000 series. So that's interesting to see those numbers there. But what you're going to find really crazy at 4K is when you enable ray tracing, the VRAM requirements kind of jump up quite a bit. And 8 gigabytes is not going to cut it. You see the performance tank by more than half with the 3070 and 3060 Ti. And you see the 2080 Ti took a very minimal impact. And now here we are with the 3080 ahead of the 2080 Ti, or the 6800 ahead of the 2080 Ti, and the 3080 and the 6800 XT pretty much neck and neck. The 6800 XT does have a slight edge against it, and out there in the lead is going to be the 3090 over the 6900 XT. Now we keep in mind we kept these numbers all separated on the chart and in the same the same spot so that things didn't shift around as we were moving. And if you wanted to look at one set of cards over the other, you can kind of see where they land. So the Radeon cards, instead of being mixed all in, they're right there where they are. If we had moved them top to bottom, everything would have shifted nonstop and it would have been a little bit more difficult to follow. So at least then you can switch back and forth. But now you do have to keep in mind, again, there is some image quality differences here, quite a bit at times. The biggest impact here, I would say, if you're looking at this for performance ideas, and you know, this isn't a versus. This one's very much not a versus. Now, one day maybe if they correct the rendering so that it's the same across the board, maybe we can do it as a versus. But for right now, it is very much, this is kind of how the game is. So let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Both cards seem to do very good. It's good to see the performance, but the feature is now supported across the board, even though I will still tell you to turn it off because ray tracing in this game is absolutely horrendous. All right, guys, it's been Keith with WCCF Tech TV. Hope you enjoyed the video, got something out of it. Like, subscribe, you know what to do, and we'll catch you in the next one.